Oh man.
Hi everyone. I hope you enjoyed the Paper Tigers. We are joined here today by the cast and crew. So thank you for sticking around for the Q&A. If you haven't already done so, please put your questions in the little question box below the player. So can I have everyone in the room just introduce themselves, your name, and your role in the film?
All at the same time?
Yeah, all at the same time. I will also introduce myself, which I forgot to do. I'm Selena. I'm the festival director. Y'all saw me at the beginning. Yeah, let's start with Matthew. Why don't you go?
Ha! I get to go first, guys. See that? Matthew Page. My character is Carter. That's it.
I'll go next then. Elaine Uy, I played Danny.
I'm Roger Yuan, and I play Sifu Cheng.
I'm Ron Ewan, and I play Hank.
I'm Beltran. I play bartender. Also, write and direct on the side.
You play bartender like during all scenes, just in the background?
Yeah. Yep. Everywhere. It's in my rider. Hey, Paaff. Hello. Thank you, Philly.
So Bao, can you tell us a little bit about like how you started writing this film? Like what even inspired you to write a kung fu comedy film?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up watching kung fu movies. That was a great steady diet for us. It was growing up and watching Hollywood movies in the theaters, you know, James Cameron and Steven Spielberg in the theaters, but at home we would go find bootleg home videotapes of like movies from Asia and TV shows. So that was kind of like our different, you know, hamburgers outside and then noodles at home, you know, that type of movie diet that we had. And just, you know, always inspired by it. So I wanted to make something that kind of paid tribute to that, but also to kind of growing up and studying martial arts and the friends and mentors that we made along the way, and have a story that kind of like captures all that in a loving tribute.
How did you get to meet everyone here? Like, what was the process like? Did you have anyone in mind? I know with Ron, there's this bit where he's got a wig and you know, like it sort of seems like that was very tailor made, or that bit was very tailor made for Ron. So like, how did you get to know everyone here, and were there any characters that you wrote specifically with someone in mind?
I'll take that second question first. You know, in general, just the characters were all collections of people that you see along the way. You know, studying martial arts, you're going to meet a lot of different people along the way, and many fun, interesting personalities that are quite different from each other and from yourself. So there was always some humor to find with that, but also, you know, loving tributes to mentors, like I said. And the thing about this movie is that we shot, you know, in different pieces because it's an independent film. So we, you know, had to do different fundraising and different Kickstarters to kind of get us through to even make it happen. So Roger came on early because we shot all those youth portions, or kind of the glory years as we call it, actually 3 years ago. You know, Roger came in with a younger cast, and we shot that almost as its own thing. In a lot of ways, kind of set the template in a way to think about how the rest of the characters are going to grow into, and what kind of figure Sifu is for these tigers as they grow older. So in a lot of ways, that kind of like set the tone for a lot of things. But we also didn't know what the future cast was going to be. So it's kind of like an interesting way of trying to be open to, you know, the actors that we can have, but also just kind of what it can be, and that's kind of like an interesting place artistically. And then flash forward to last year is when we ended up having casting and finding, you know, the rest of the cast. And Ron is a good friend. Ron and Roger are good friends with Yuji Okamoto, our producer, and that was a conversation. So Ron came on earlier on that. As far as the wig and all that stuff, in the script, it was never really it was never envisioned that way. It's only because I saw Ron's beautiful bald head, and I said we have to do something. We have to do something about this. And Ron apparently has, you know, many I don't know, what would you call them, wig tailors or wig designers? But Ron had all these selections of wigs to show us and like audition. He's like, "Do you like this? Do you like that?" And he like sent them back.
Dude, I still have
So-
some wigs in my apartment.
Yeah, that's. Yeah.
He raided the closet.
All day with this.
Exactly.
No, but
So-
I had like 6 wigs. So I told Val like, "Yo, I got hookups with wig people." So which I do, and then I was sending them pictures to see if Val liked it. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Yeah. And a fun bit of trivia, if the audience doesn't know, Ron and Roger are actually brothers. So it was a kind of a way kismet. I almost think like kind of a destiny wave that this kind of connected, all of us as a film family together for this movie. And Elaine came to us through our great casting director, Yumi Takada, and we loved, what he was bringing, and we brought him on board. Matt, we had talked for a while, and Matt, if you all might know, is on is the star of the show Enter the Dojo on YouTube, and we were big fans of that show for many, many, many moons. We had talked to Matt, a while back before the movie was really like a real thing yet, and we were just kind of keeping up with him, and we always had him in mind to play Carter.
That is super awesome. Are you all like martial artists?
I'm a dancer.
No, you shouldn't have said anything. You should let the audience just think that Ron and I were lovers or something. And that would have been great.
Yeah. They can still think that. It's not too late.
I actually am a dancer. Well, I
am too. Elaine.
Nothing wrong with that, Elaine.
I thought it was like a joke. Are you trying to make fun of me, my friend? No, I think out of the cast, I think I'm maybe the one that has the least amount of martial arts training pedigree. I have some, but certainly not to the extent of Ron and Roger and Matt over here, with his Enter the Dojo. I love it. But yeah, that's the extent of my martial arts experience.
So what was it like training or choreograph? Like who choreographed all these? Was it Val? Were you in there like just no?
I'm at Crafties. I don't spend any time in that. We have a great action director, Ken Kidwa, and his action team, Sam Loke and Kerry Wong, and working with all the cast. And basically, this is kind of the model, like a little bit more of the Asian filmmaking, where you have kind of a unit that handles action and designs action, just so it fits more like a glove in hand as opposed to kind of a consultant. And then the editor ends up, changing everything. So we always were very true to, making sure that the action design felt good, and also that they had ownership in cutting and controlling the tempo and all those things. So from soup to nuts, Ken was acting director in terms of working with the cast, choreographing, and then even editing the scenes as well.
And Bao was at the Crafties as soon as we were doing the fight stuff. He was like, "I'm out." He was on his laptop.
Like y'all got this. I'm good.
Yeah, you guys got it.
No director needed.
We're fine.
So we have an audience question actually quite related to that. So Latevin asks, loved this. So happy to be involved. Which fight scene was the hardest to learn? And which scene was the toughest to get through because of the comedy?
Oh, dang. That's a good question. So it's 2 parts, right? It's which one's the hardest, and then which one's the hardest because of the comedy, right?
Right. So which one's the hardest to learn, and which one was the hardest to get through?
That's a good question.
I mean, anything with Matt was just a challenge because it's. I think you guys need to put out some kind of blooper reel because, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I remember just stopping and going, I'm just marveling at this the comedy that's happening between him and Ron and all that stuff. I think anything that whole second section, that second act, The entire sequence was really tough to get through, and because it was hot too. That room was so hot to shoot in. As far as choreography goes, in terms of what was the most difficult, I think certainly the stuff that I was doing at the last round. There was only because it was fluid. We kept adjusting things because we didn't know what the scale of the location was going to be until maybe a week before. So that was challenging, but it was nothing too crazy.
Yeah, I think as far as choreography goes, it was fun. I mean, the action team, they were just great. Sam and Carrie worked with before, and Ken was awesome, and just we all had so much fun. So I don't think all that was pretty, but I didn't have an extensive fight like Elaine's, but that was fun. As far as the scene getting through it, yeah, I wouldn't say it was hard. I was juiced up with Matt. Like it was just yeah. Carter just made me want to crack on him and just I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the way the schedule worked out, we had been insulting each other for like a week and a half by the time it was time to fight, So we've been picking on each other in all the different improvs, and then it was finally time to rock and roll.
I have to say, you guys were great. You guys were so funny.
Thank you.
Yeah, laughed so hard, and that was really, really mean what you did with the toupee.
I love that part so much.
Oh man.
For me, actually, it was great working with the kids. So I had, the younger kid, and then, Yoshi, Peter, and Hui later on. And so I was actually, there was not much action for me on this. I just kind of did more of being seafood. So it was actually a lot of fun in that respect, and just kind of getting into being an actor, trying to serve that relationship that Bao was speaking of with disciples. And you guys, I had not met. Obviously, I know Ron, but had not met Alan or Mike and Matthew. But you guys killed it. So kudos.
This is great. This is like a ghost where Sifu is really telling me I'm doing great, and then Danny's like, "Oh, thank you so much, thank you." I have no idea. It's like cathartic to actually finally talk to you.
Yeah, because when Roger and I were talking earlier, Roger was like, "I haven't met any of the adults," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I realized the entirety of the movie, you're just a picture.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting how the story developed in that way, but you're still so present as a character throughout the entire film that I just totally didn't realize you weren't actually there acting as the Sifu.
Yeah.
So yeah, kudos to you.
Yeah,
and kudos to Bao for writing it the way that it was, because it was really powerful, for sure.
Yeah, and even to that, we had, we shot that beginning portion, like I said, separately. So we actually made kind of an assembly of those scenes, and then we gave it to the adult actors to reference and look at, and then, here are the memories that are actually going to be your memories. And maybe Elaine and Ron can speak to that in terms of just being able to kind of do their preparation and seeing, how the younger actors behaved and how they had shaped those characters and who they were younger.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really, really informative to get that prologue. When we first started developing the characters and talking to Bao and doing a lot of improv stuff with Ron and Mikkel and myself, and even with Matt when we were trying to get a sense of how things were grounded before, and getting the sense of what the chemistry was and the brotherhood that they had was, it was insightful, and there was a organic nature to, in some ways, transferring that energy and that spirit to us, just watching them play and watching them have that sort of reverence towards Sifu, and all those things really play out. And at least for me, I used it as a huge source material, if you will, to really ground the character and then really try to figure out where Danny is now, and to try to mark a difference between the two, a dissonance between the two characters, so that there is such a marked, a specific difference between the two. Well, I can't speak for Ron, but I would imagine it would be the same sort of ride that he went through.
Yeah, what you guys did, with the kids and Raj was awesome, and for me too, it's like when Huge and Val and I first talked, it was like, oh, comic relief, this, we're getting into it, and then when I read the script, it was just, there's something beautifully sad about, Tahane in the element of the story, and for me, because he misses his brothers, Danny and Jim so much, and he just lost his Sifu. It's like he's trying to hide all these things under, jokes and other stuff, but he's actually a sad guy that's just looking for his brothers again, and for me, that friendship that's established with the kids, and then with Yoshi and Peter, and Guy playing our younger selves, and then the three of us, me, Elaine, and Miguel, where I think that was what the most important thing, and Bao, like, as far as like address that right from the get-go, was like we had rehearsals and improv, so that we can, get that bonding, so that you actually as an audience believe that we could have been bros, and friends, and for all these years. So and so that you guys can buy into the baggage and all that stuff. And I just think, if it wasn't for Bao and the producers actually acknowledging that and giving us time and prep, that was where we found the magic.
Yeah, I mean, that's for an indie film, and I'm glad the actors and all you guys were, totally gung ho for it. Usually on an indie film, rehearsal time is the first to go, and so what was very supportive that we had from the producers to keep that time. All that time, is not wasted time. It's very important to lay all the groundwork to get going, and hopefully, and it sounds like the audience can definitely relate to those relationships.
So we have another audience question, and this one is from Winslow C, who's 12, and they asked, "Did you actually all do kung fu outside of the movie?"
I didn't. I thought it would be a lateral move. I was like, I've done karate, I've done jujitsu. How hard can kung fu be? Turns out really hard, actually. During the rehearsals in LA, I would go back to my hotel and I'd turn on the air conditioning and I would just lay there, just letting my body hurt from just doing kung fu, trying to learn kung fu 8 hours a day in a week. Just being like, I thought I was prepared. I thought I was in shape. I was not in shape, but I did love learning all of it. It was just quite a crash course.
Actually, you know what? Going back to the recent question about what the hardest thing to get through, I forgot. Me and Elaine were watching, when Miguel first fights Matt. It was just Tiger, Dragon, Hawk. I was so hard to keep a straight face.
That was difficult. I think you went through like the alphabet animal book where it's like every animal you went through. I was like, where's this guy going?
Dolphins, yeah, I feel like there was only like 5 animals like written, and then they just started shouting out animals just to see what I would do.
Yeah. Whale, sea lion. I don't know, some other random stuff. That was really difficult. I think I already said, but for martial arts, this was my first time doing any type of kung fu, and I tried afterwards. I even reached out to Kenny. I was like, hey, is there any way we could still work out and continue it? But pandemic happened, but would have loved to have kept going with it.
So that kind of leads us into the next audience question, which is from Andy, and they asked, was the filming affected by COVID, and how will independent filmmaking change going forward? They love the combination of comedy and kung fu, and would love to know what your inspirations are in this area. Is it Jackie Chan? Is it others? Wow. Take it away.
Okay, well, it's a big question. Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question as far as production and how things are. I mean, things are slowly getting back to work, and as even during pandemic time, so that there's kind of a way for it, and but it's kind of slowly but surely. So in terms of like for our film, luckily we had shot last summer, and it was well before the lockdowns and the pandemic, so we were able to finish filming. We were able to do editing as well, but then we had to, the lockdown happened, but then we had to do remote work for our color and sound and post production and all that stuff. So we did kind of catch the tail end, and we're still putting things together to kind of get things ready for our theatrical release next year. So it is kind of slowing down things and affecting things. But I think the main portion, we were very lucky to shoot and get everything in the can as far as, with everyone, with the normal production, we were able to kind of get all that done before the lockdown and the pandemic. So that was good for us. And what was the other part of the question? Kind of a general
What are your
state of
inspirations?
affairs? Oh, the inspirations.
Yeah. What are your inspirations in terms of like the combination between comedy and kung fu?
I mean, I think it's all hodgepodge and mishmash. Like I said, I grew up, watching a lot of Hong Kong films and Stephen Chow and like Jeffrey Lau, and like kind of like they always bend genre in a way that never they felt like they were bound to a genre, and it always felt free to me. Whereas I feel in the West, there's always like, well, what is it? Comedy? Is that an action? It's like it's very like about that. So I always loved in Asian cinema. It's a lot more freer and looser. So I guess that's just kind of like the things that I grew up on and seeing. So I mean, like Taika Waititi, I'm a big fan of his. Like his work is very fluid in mood and tone. And so as long as it's honest to me, I think it's as long as it's honest and feels right for the moment. That to me is more interesting than is this comedy, is it drama and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and I think all of us had similar tastes, right, guys? Because for me, when I first read the script, yeah, all those things hit me. What Bao wrote, and it's yeah. I think one of the things you said too, besides Taika, was Shaun of the Dead. Meets kung fu theater. And it really there is moments of that, and that's why it's like this is a comedy, a drama, a heartfelt film with martial arts, and I think it's a special one.
For me, it was a little bit different because, as Dao was saying, it's like 3 years ago, and when I came in, it was more serious. He wanted Dao had wanted more of a traditional Chinese master, and my martial arts background, just a quick introduction. I actually, when I was young, I kind of taught myself for different reasons. So I was always in search of instructors or different instructors. It was a case for me, like family didn't have the money or the time or the commitment to actually nurture that, and I had to kind of find that for myself. So in playing the Sifu character, I kind of idealized in my own head what a good person would be and how they would try to share, as much as possible, and then kind of like trying to bond. And this goes with, again, going back to Bao, when I came over and met with the three young kids, as well as the older, Peter and Yoshi and Guy. Bao had us all, the younger children as well as the older teens, meet up and formulate that kind of the bowl, the dish, to cook that dish together, And so even doing the restaurant scene, that was a really kind of a nice, but also a very, very appropriate scene, because it was about building that camaraderie and feel. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Just to kind of. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, what? Oh, yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing in terms of like where we are. Yes, we grew up on Asian films and love American, but this to me is a very Asian American film. And that's kind of like, I think what we'll let the scholars decide and talk about it. But just a case in point, with Roger, I think there was a conversation about. I think you had the question of like, well, do you want me to play this with an accent? And I never had it in mind with an accent at all. Like just speak the way you speak. And I think it has a ripple effect that if a master of that period and that time spoke English, in a perfectly fluent way, that creates a backstory that's, very different than what we would say, the Western gaze of what a master is and what that is. And, for me, it was all about the freedom in a way that kind of reflected our experiences, and we have many older generations that can speak, very fluent English for many different reasons. Either they were interpreters or spies even. So that creates a whole nother backstory that, is always very interesting. And so that was always the freedom that I wanted to give to our actors on that.